Chris. I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Yes, I'm okay. Which part of the world are you in, roughly?
Yeah, I'm in the Cotswolds, so I'm really lucky. Yeah, it's lovely, and it's been a lovely day as well. Really sunny, so
Beautiful
yeah, very
part of
grateful.
a beautiful part of the country. I did a 24-hour running race in the Cotswolds. Um,
Oh, did you?
yeah,
Where?
it's well, it's one of those places where you hear Cotswolds, and my mind starts thinking, "Hang on, are we talking like Lake District here or something?" But no, it's not. It's not actually far from the southwest, is it?
Yeah, it's quite central, isn't it? Really? Yeah, yeah. Wasn't around Broadway Tower, was it?
No, it was I'm trying to think the name of it now. It was. I usually wear a T-shirt. It's got it emblazoned on it, and
Yeah.
I still can't remember. No, it was called the. Oh, I can't remember now, but it was basically a running race around this beautiful country house, and each lap was about 5 miles, and you just ran as many as you could in 24 hours. And I think I managed about 76 miles, and then took myself off to my tent to sleep. And a few of the guys I was with just ran all through the night, and they ran. I think one guy ran 130 miles. It's quite really great experience, but beautiful part of England.
It is. Yeah, yeah. Very, very lovely. Yeah, very fortunate.
Yeah, so we've met through LinkedIn, which is that's becoming more of a valuable platform to me as I do more podcasts, because you just get to you get to meet some really fascinating people, and it's kind of there. You just see their profile, and immediately you can kind of, within 3 sentences, get an idea of where this person's been in their life. And of course, yours is quite quite unique and quite exciting, I should say.
Yeah, I've not been on there very long at all, and I kind of had to be persuaded to go on there. And yeah, so I'm glad because it's put us in touch. It wasn't something that I was doing before, until very recently. So yeah, I'm really glad we connected.
Yes, thank you. So should we start from the beginning then? How did you join the police force?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Cotswolds. I was very, very lucky, and grew up in a little village, and it was lovely. And the older I get, the more thankful I am of that kind of upbringing. Really, it's really helped me along the way. And yeah, when I was 18, I was really sporty, and my parents were market gardeners, and they didn't want me to become a market gardener. I think they could see the way it was that industry was going to go. So um, I decided to join the Met Police Cadets, which was all sort of, it was sport and adventure training, community service within different places within London, and that kind of thing for a year. And it was just fantastic, amazing, grounding, and brilliant experience, really.
Did
And
you
from there, you just went straight on to Hendon, to the police training college, and trained as a police constable.
police cadets? Well, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I'm guessing you don't get to arrest people as a police cadet.
No, there was nothing really policey about it at all. It was just literally, a lot of adventure training, canoeing, climbing mountains, going up high things, to scare you, that kind of thing. A lot of disciplines for, it was just, yeah, fantastic all round grounding, but nothing, around police really, other than you were, obviously going on to train as a police constable at Hendon, which was kind of the other end of the complex.
Does
Yeah.
does everybody train at Hendon, or is that just for the Met?
That was just, yeah, that's just the Met. Yeah, the Met Police. Yeah. Although I think that's really, I've lost track of it, but I think that's really changed. I think a large part of that great big centre's gone now. Training's changed a lot since I went through.
Well, I bet the police force has probably changed a lot, hasn't it? Because Were you subject to sort of sexism and that kind of, that was kind of a big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I joined sort of when I went to North London in after I passed my initial training, the beginning of 1986, and I think looking back, it was, you know, really quite a good time to join, really, Chris, because there was a lot of change in process, and a lot of opportunities for women, really. Yeah, there were the old kind of old dinosaurs, but it was a real, you know, you could really get on well as a woman, to be honest.
Was that
Probably a few years prior to that, it would have been quite a different, you know, job to have joined. But yeah, I think I look back and think I'm lucky, really.
was that before was it the Stephen Lawrence inquiry? That was a big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was before, way before that. I actually went to North London just after the Broadwater Farm estate riots in Tottenham, where PC Keith Blakelock was hacked to death. So it was literally just a few months after that. So it's, you know, it's a long time ago now. Yeah, it was a steep learning curve, that's for sure. You know, going from a little Cotswold village to that sort of environment.
Yeah, that was a big thing, wasn't it, in our country's history, the Broadwater Farm riots. Should we talk a bit about that for people who probably don't know what we're probably too young to know what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't involved in it. As I say, I was still at training school when it was actually taking place, but Keith Blakelock was a local beat officer, and he was on a group of officers who were largely sort of just what they called home beats, so just like local community bobbies, but had been attached to some fire officers, I think they probably largely firemen. They were trying to put out a fire on the Broadwater Farm estate, and they were protecting them because and there was a lot of unrest on the estate, and it was, this riot was, you know, evolving with the local community, and so yeah, they were protecting these particular firemen who were trying to put out this, I think it was a fire in a stairwell, and they came under attack, and they got sort of ambushed in this stairwell. I don't know the total accurate ins and outs of it, but yeah, and Keith, he got stabbed multiple times and was killed, and I worked with a lot of people that were with him, you know, and he suffered mentally or physically through being, you know, attacked with machetes and axes and things like that, and we're lucky to come out of alive, really. Yeah, so it was an estate, and there just was a lot of unrest, and it just evolved into this riot. But I kind of was on the periphery of it, really, and you know, just ended up working with people that were affected by it, really.
Yeah, I've kind of got Keith's faces emblazoned in my memory because I can just remember it from the front of it's the front of every newspaper, and it kept, his image kept coming up for, well, probably years after that, wasn't it? Was it sort of, the Broadwater Farm was predominantly Afro-Caribbean community. They were protesting at what they perceived was unfair the police targeting them sort of disproportionately.
Yeah, basically that's what happened, and you know, my memory fails a bit, and forgive me for that, but I think that there were certain events that happened, and it led to you know, that this unrest between you know, local community and the police, and it developed into this unfortunate riot, and sadly Keith lost his life. Yeah,
it was awful because it not only that, but for as many things that might go on in Britain, you didn't get police officers dragged off and have their bloody heads chopped off. It was just that it was just a shock for the nation, wasn't it? And and obviously for the, you know, for the police, it must have been particularly hard to live through that.
Oh yeah, I mean the way, yeah, he was brutally killed, and yeah, and I'm still friends with people that were with him, you know, and they live with the consequences of that, you know, that night and the effects of it in different ways, you know. So yeah, and um, you know, we remember him every year. There's a memorial at Muswell Hill to him, so, and we make sure there's always flowers by the memorial. We all chip in, so you know, he's never forgotten. Although I'd never know, you know, I didn't know him. You know, it happened before I got to Hornsey, but he's never forgotten by everybody. So it's the least we can do for him, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, thank you for talking about it. So I'm aware it's not like your story. It was a big thing from my growing up.
Mm.
I remember the name Winston Silcott, wasn't it? Was the guy that kind of, if we can say, took the rap. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but
Yeah,
and then there
yeah,
was, and then it came out that maybe it wasn't him. I don't know if
that's right. I'm not um, you know, sure of the exact detail, but he was one of the people, wasn't he? He was convicted, and then later his conviction was quashed, and nobody's been ever convicted of Keith's murder.
no. Gosh,
Yeah.
awful, awful.
Mm.
So there you are. How old were you when you started working for the Met?
Yeah, so I was 19 when I was walking around the streets of London, but you know, that time we're talking about now, you know, the riots and that time. So yeah, really, really young, although I didn't feel it at the time, but yeah, 19's young, isn't it?
Yeah, same as me in Northern Ireland. It's walking along the main streets of a major city, carrying what was effectively a machine gun. Bizarre. You go from kind of normality across that line, don't you, into God, this is all, it's so real, and you have to grow up fast. I don't know if you grow up fast. I don't know if you certainly get acclimatized to a side of life that I'm guessing many people just never get to appreciate.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Do you know, I remember uh, when I sort of first went out on the streets, and you used to have a sort of a more experienced officer with you, looking after you for a while. And the first person that came up to me, and I remember feeling terrified, thinking, oh, what is he going to ask me? You know, and all he wanted to know was how to get somewhere. It makes me chuckle, really. You know, but you're absolutely right. You soon adapt, don't you, to your environment, however old or however young you are.
It's a steep learning curve, isn't it?
Yeah, it
Steep.
definitely is.
And so I guess for our American friends listening, we should point out that British police officers traditionally don't carry arms, do they, other than the truncheon? Is that still the case?
Yeah, it still is. I mean, I think there's more armed, and I couldn't tell you the figures, more than, you know, when I was in. But yeah, basically, yeah, it's an unarmed police force. Yeah, with just an armed, you know, department, armed response side.
And that's what we would call the armed response unit, is it?
Yeah, so yeah, that's what I was on, the armed response unit. Yeah, yeah.
And how did you transition then from, in fact, should we just say what were the kind of exciting moments of being a Met police officer for you? Were there any particular incidents that you were involved in that you remember?
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you about sort of the three major sort of traumatic incidents if you wanted me to, Chris. That would, if you, yeah. So yeah, I went from being a 19-year-old, carried on, you know, quite successfully with my career, and till 1991, so I was about 25, and I attended a call to a guy causing a disturbance in Wood Green High Road, which is like the main shopping centre. And I was driving the van, and I got a male colleague with me, John, And it was just really should have been just an ordinary call, really. A shop had called us to this guy, and I pulled up the van, and I could see from the description that the suspect who we'd been called to had just crossed the road. So I jumped out of the van, and John went into the shop to find out, you know, what had happened and why they'd called us, which was pretty normal, kind of what you'd do. And another police car pulled up behind my van with two other colleagues in. And I crossed the road, and he got his back to me, and he's a really huge, you know, well over 6 foot tall guy. And I said to him something along the lines of, "What have you been up to?" or "Hello." I can't really remember what I was saying, but as the words left my mouth, he swung round, and this happened so fast. I was flying through the air, and it was the days before body armor or anything like that. So I was just wearing just a short sleeved white shirt. And it's funny, women at that time were issued with these really tiny, short little wooden truncheons that went in their handbags, which was no good to anybody. So that was back in my locker in the station. So basically, you know, we were totally unprotected, really. But yeah, and I was fit and strong, and I was flying through the air, and he'd stabbed me in the stomach. And he'd got the knife sticking out of his fist, so the blade was sticking out of his fist, so he's punching. So I actually thought I'd been punched, but I got up off the floor and thought, remember thinking, God, that really hurts. But I could see him attacking my friend, and I just, you know, moved towards him to try and stop him, you know, stabbing her. But this is all happening so fast. He just went absolutely, you know, it was just a frenzy of violence. And yeah, and then as I moved forward, he sent me flying backwards again. I landed about 12 feet on the pavement, and he stabbed me twice more. And I was incapacitated by that. And I remember my white shirt just turned red, and I just couldn't work it out. It was just, I just didn't know what had happened. It just happened so fast. And you know, I was 25. I was very fit and strong. I did a lot of weights, and I felt invincible, you know. And I just had this I've never felt terror like it, you know. I just felt so vulnerable and scared. And basically, to cut it all down, he stabbed 4 of us 10 times within about 90 seconds.
Gosh.
Yeah, and he was a mental health patient. He was a schizophrenic, and yeah, he just went absolutely, you know, he just lost complete control, you know, when we turned up. And yeah, so thankfully we all survived. And actually that incident led on to John, who I was with, did a lot of research, and I helped him a little bit. And the body armor and batons were brought in as a direct result of that incident. So it just kind of shows you that you know, good can come out of these.
Yeah. How did you overwhelm him in the end then? If he sounds like he stabbed all of you, someone must have kind of jumped on him in the end, or it's.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I've only learnt this recently, actually, all these years later, that after he'd stabbed me and my friend, so he'd stabbed us, I think, about 8 times, he started to calm down a bit. He stabbed one of the other officers in the arm. And then John came across from the shop that he'd gone into. He'd obviously heard over the radio what was going on. And he came over. He got stabbed in the stomach, but he got help from an off-duty PC who was actually just out shopping with his wife. And he helped, just actually persuade him to hand over the knife. I think he was just calming down, you know, as he stabbed us. He was sort of coming out of whatever episode he was going into, and John managed to persuade him to give him the knife.
Okay.
So yeah, but that all happened within about 90 seconds.
How soon were you back on the job then after this? Did you I mean, well, let's take it one step at a time. I'm guessing you went into intensive care and they had to keep you alive?
Yeah, I mean, we were all really lucky. We were all rushed off to different hospitals, went into accident emergency and went into theatre, and you know, fortunately, he'd I say only, he'd got the blade was fatal. It was a Swiss Army knife, so I mean it could have been a lot worse, although the injuries were quite deep because he was punching with a lot of force. But yeah, so we spent a few days in hospital, and it hit all the newspapers and the television, and went home to be in, you know, mum to my 10-month-old son at the time. And it was sort of an era where there was no concept of the sort of stress side of it, you know. And I think the character that I was as well, I sort of didn't acknowledge that I would have been, you know, affected by it sort of mentally at all.
Yeah. And of course, being a mother adds, you know, that adds a completely different angle on it, doesn't it? In that moment,
Yeah.
you must be thinking, "Oh my God, I might not see my child again, and they might not have a parent."
Yeah, I remember clearly lying on the pavement, and some amazing passers-by were sort of giving first aid, and I just, yeah, that was going through my mind constantly, like, you know, don't die. I just kept sort of repeating this message to myself quietly in my head, you know, don't die. There's Ben at home, you know, and yeah, just trying to keep my eyes open, and so that was, you know, I sort of really focused on him, really. Yeah. And yeah, and I had to have that, you know, I had to go home and after the few days in hospital and be a mum, and you know, and obviously I would have been affected by what happened, but I didn't really realize at the time, if that makes sense, Chris.
No, well, I mean, it does. When you're young, you just tend to get on with it, don't you?
Yeah.
It's when you get to well, I'll say my ripe old age, that, you know, well, I'm not allowed to include you in this old person's bracket. But I mean, I'm just thinking now of friends that were in the Falklands that are only just now, after what's that, 40 years ago, they're only just now going to their GPs to say,
Yeah.
you know, what's wrong with me? I've felt this way for 40 years. Something's not right. And of course, it's the effects of trauma, or we should say unresolved trauma.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's a very misunderstood area, and it's a very unstudied area, I guess you could say. Even though we now realize, and you know, the people that were shell shocked in the First World War this was all kind of representative of trauma. So
Yeah.
did you have any kind of lasting effects, or was there a moment in your life where it all sort of came to a head?
I think at that particular time, because there were two other really significant sort of incidents relatively soon after, which I guess I could tell you, you know, they kind of were the straw that eventually broke the camel's back. But at that point, you know, going back to work was difficult, you know, putting back on the uniform, and I think, you know, I was stressed trying to sort of juggle a, you know, young family, and my marriage was going horribly wrong, and that ended up in divorce. You know, there were cracks starting to show, but you know, you as you well know, you sort of you have to be fairly resilient to do any of these sort of kind of jobs. So you know, it was just in my nature just to get on with it, get back to work, and you know, and that's what I did. And I started studying for my sergeant's exam, and then in the next sort of major sort of trauma for me was in 1993, and it was just before Christmas, and I was again at Wood Green, and we got a coded bomb threat from the IRA that bombs were going to go off in Wood Green High Road again, exactly the same area where I'd been stabbed. So we all jumped into whatever vehicle we could and just made our way down there as fast as we could, knowing that there were going to be bombs that were going to go off. It was a recognised, you know, code word, which you'll know all about that. And it was, yeah, just before Christmas, so there were loads of Christmas shoppers, and we just randomly started screaming at people to get out of the shops. You know, there was no sort of real plan. I got no idea where the bombs were or anything, and just going from shop to shop, and I'd literally gone in off the pavement into this sort of covered walkway, and one of them went off, and I just remember finding myself on the floor again, and there were pigeons flying everywhere and smoke, and it kind of went into slow motion, and I got up and I was uninjured. Unfortunately, the bombs were, you know, fairly small. They were a couple of pounds, and they put them in the bins, so all the shop fronts had come in, but thankfully nobody was killed, and I think about 10 people were hit by flying glass, but I was uninjured. I was just like really frightened, because I just didn't know whether another one was going to go off. And so I went back out onto the street and met a colleague of mine, and we just made our way up the street, trying to clear the street as best we could. And then literally where we just moved away from, another bomb went off in the bin just where we just moved away from. So we were just incredibly lucky. And yeah, it was just really frightening, really, sort of not knowing where the next one, if there was another one. Unfortunately there wasn't, but it was just total chaos, and it just another sort of major trauma. Though I wasn't physically injured, it was, you know, impacted on top of, you know, the stabbing, really.
Was anyone ever sort of brought to justice for those bombs?
That's a really good question that I never kind of thought of, and I never had it. No, I really have no idea. No idea at all. But yeah, but a good question. They might have been, but yeah, I really don't know much about, you know, that side of it, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, and again, it's sort of it had a huge impact on me. I carried on studying my sergeant's exam and passed that amazingly, and carried on being a mum, and I was a single mum. And yeah, sort of life was ticking on, but you know, obviously it you know, did impact on me mentally.
How was that coming out? I mean, were you drinking or anything like this?
No, I didn't drink. I've been one. I've sort of exercised, probably excessive exercise at points has always been my thing. I went to. At one point I was bulimic. I started sort of binge eating, and that didn't last for a long time, and I kind of resolved it myself. But you know, and just incredibly stressed, really, sort of trying to juggle everything, and
it's hard, isn't it? When you're in a military, in a uniform force, you're hesitant to seek help because you've got to be performing all the time, and the worry is you're going to lose your job, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was an era where, you know, you just didn't talk about stress. Was almost a taboo subject. You know, it was a weakness. It was it just wasn't something, you know. Thankfully, I know we've got a lot more we can do, but we've come a long way since then, thankfully. So, and my character also was, you know, quite resilient, and I just very determined, and just really whatever life threw at me, I kind of just tried to bat off, you know, and just get on with my job, and you know, that's what I did largely. And then the following year, they the ARVs, which was a very new concept, the armed response vehicles, were looking for women, and there'd been no women at all. And I applied and passed all the selection process for that. And I was the first ever mum to join the armed response vehicles. I was about the third woman, but the first mum to go onto that. So that, something now in hindsight that I'm really proud of.
Is that the SO19 then? Is that the name of
Yeah, that's right. So it was SO19. So it was the armed response vehicles, the mobile unit was a new concept back in 1994, and to have women on it as well was really unusual.
So are we talking, Helen, sorry to interrupt, but are we talking, no, I'm assuming what, these super fast cars, undercover, you're all wearing what, civilian clothes, but maybe with body armor that says police on it? Am I in the right sort of area?
Actually, we were uniformed, and we wore exactly the same uniform, because they did at that particular time. They didn't want us to look any different to normal police, but so we'd got white shirts. It's quite comical now if you look at what all the equipment and kit that they've got in their uniforms now. But we're literally in white shirts and the normal police uniform, and in marked police vehicles. The only sort of difference was that we were armed. Yeah. So it's developed an awful lot, hasn't it, since then?
Yes. It's funny when you see these guys rock up to some incident, and I've always found that funny when you see military or police personnel in civilian clothes, and they just look almost like so normal. But they've got a bloody 9mm in their hand. There's something like a bit cool about that kind of image. Maybe we need to get away from thinking guns are cool, but yeah,
some of those images recently, the terrorist attacks where they've been caught on people's phones, and you're quite right, you've got like this, even to me, you see this ordinary guy, and then it's quite remarkable how it's caught on phones, isn't it, as it's happening, which
one guy there, he's got a blooming handbag, or a man bag they call it. I'm guessing that's because he's got his ammunition and radio in it, and he's got skinny jeans on. It's like
I remember. I saw that. I know exactly the one you're talking about. I watched that. And you think that's remarkable, really. And you get an insight into something, don't you, through people's mobile phones that you wouldn't have seen years ago.
Yeah, and also I bet it's images that I think the powers that be probably don't want them out there, do they?
Yeah, that's right. I suppose every positive has a negative, and every negative has a positive, doesn't it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there I was on the ARVs. I passed my advanced driving, and I was juggling, Ben and my young son, and things were becoming sort of quite, stressful, and then it was Boxing Day 1994 that was kind of the major last sort of traumatic incident, and we got called by the local police at Enfield, North London, to go and back them up. It was Boxing Day, and they'd been caught in a domestic incident where our suspect had he'd abducted his young daughter, a little toddler, in a pushchair from his girlfriend, and he'd got a gun, and he'd got a history of violence with guns, shooting people, armed robbery, that kind of background. So we were called as the armed backup, and we were just forming in a side road, and our plan was to go and get him out of this flat where we knew he was holed up, and hopefully sort of resolve it one way or another, hopefully peacefully. That was our plan. And I remember being stood at the back of the police vehicle, and we were just sort of getting everybody together, and I was just thinking I better put my body armor on, which was in the boot of the car. And then I just heard one of my colleagues shout, "It's him." And again, I can't explain how quickly this sort of erupted, and it's faster than I can speak. But basically, our suspect had come and found us in the street, and he got the toddler in the pushchair. And I remember looking up, and everybody kind of was reacting to him, moving sort of towards him. And I started pulling my gun out of its holster as I was moving forward, and I just got this glimpse of a gun that he got a handgun that he took out of his sheepskin coat, and he put it in his mouth. And again, this is like so quick, it's just seconds. And then his arm was outstretched, and he let off a shot, and I was shot. And I knew instantly that I'd been shot. It was just like being hit by a truck, but there was no pain. And I just remember this fear, just overwhelming sort of fear going through my body. It was just absolute terror. And he got shot by my colleagues about 8 times, but I kind of shut down, didn't hear anything other than the shot that hit me. It sounds bizarre, but and I dropped down to my knee and kept my gun up. And I think once I must have realised it was safe, I crawled behind the police car and sort of collapsed. And that's when the pain kicked in, and sort of the adrenaline probably subsided a bit. And so I'd been shot, and I lay there, and fortunately we got an ambulance, and the air ambulance landed and attended to the suspect because he'd been injured worse than me. And I went off to the local hospital, and was treated for the gunshot. And again, I was really, really incredibly lucky to survive and not be more seriously injured.
Helen, are you sure you're not a cat? You're down to 6 now.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just to give some kind of background for our friends listening and watching. I'm guessing 99.9% of police officers, probably higher than that, will go through their whole 20-year career or whatever. They might not even make an arrest. They might not even experience any kind of violent, incident. And you've been hit with like the 3 biggest ones within such a short space of time. I mean, it really is a bit like an episode of Cagney and Lacey mixed with the Bill, and I mean, the fact that you've survived, what makes it all kind of, can I say, great experience? I mean, not many people get to see that side of life. Probably wasn't pleasant at the time, obviously, but yeah, my God, I mean, this is kind of why people join the forces and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and I wouldn't change a thing. That might sound crazy, but I know you'll know what I mean. So much good comes out from these awful things, even if it's like, for me now, almost 30 years later, it sort of last year my life changed. I kept sort of not really spoken about it. I got just going back, I got discharged. I was very fortunate and got some good treatment. Was discharged with post-traumatic stress disorder, and which was really unusual then. Got some really good treatment from Professor Gordon Turnbull, who was like a leading guy, and he started in the RAF. He was a military guy. So I was really lucky. Got discharged in '96, and really sort of unfortunate. I kind of got a positive mindset. I think it's just from my sort of upbringing, and just although I felt very isolated and lost my sense of sort of purpose, I think I fared quite well. And then last year I got asked to join a group of veterans trying to break the deadlift world record for Rock to Recovery, the charity. And I madly said yes. And I was 53, and I sort of thought, God, what have I said yes to? And spent months really anxious, training as hard as I could, thinking I was going to completely let the side down, and with all these fit, amazing people. But we broke the deadlifting world record for Rock and raised a lot of money for Rock to Recovery. And I bring that in because it you know, all these years later, it was kind of pivotal. It just I got a bit of help from Rock to Recovery with my anxiety, and then I went on to this amazing Woodland project called Hidden Valley Bushcraft, the Woodland Warrior program that helped emergency services and military veterans who were struggling. And so, I went on that for a weekend, and Nick Goldsmith has helped me so much. And I ended up doing a podcast, and I'm kind of leaping ahead, but it kind of leads me to, you know, I've even spoken in public and started telling my story after all these years, you know. It's amazing. The last year I've really been helped by military people. It's just been just remarkable.
I'm just making notes here. We'll come on to Rock to Recovery because I'm doing a bit of stuff for them, Mr. Fox and Mr. Sanderson.
Yeah, it was Jamie who I actually, Jamie and Foxy came down to see us when we broke the hour deadlifting world record, and it was Jamie who I actually saw sort of a few weeks after, you know, because I realised I was really anxious, and it was kind of restricting my life, and he helped me considerably. You know, and it's directly from these amazing people that are out there in the military that they, you know, Nick Goldsmith said to me around the campfire, you know, you've got an incredible story, Helen, and it's so current, but I you know, just hearing that little comment, and he put me in touch with certain people, and it's just the power of this, you know, sort of the community out there. It's just been remarkable, really.
Are you like me? Is it only when other people say, blimey, you've lived a life or you've been through a lot, that you go, well, yeah, I guess maybe I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I think people like us, we just live our lives. We don't consider what we've been through extreme or abnormal. We just lived our lives. And you made an interesting point. I was doing a podcast with a chap today, and he just came in with that horrible cliche that society's been brainwashed with. He said, you've really turned your life around. I said, my life was never going in the wrong direction, mate. I've just lived my life. I'm not, you know, unlike a lot of people, I've lived my life. And yeah, sometimes it gets challenging. You get some mental health challenges, you get some physical or illness or, you know, whatever it might be. But to me, that's just all experience. And and if you changed any of that, you wouldn't be who the person you were. We wouldn't be having this wonderful conversation. I wouldn't be living, well, it's a dream. I live a dream life. You know, I'm just so fortunate that my life has been the way it's been. And I'm trying to get across to people that having challenges isn't a bad, you know, if you don't have challenges, how do you learn? How do you learn empathy? How do you learn what another person's going through? How do you know what a mental health challenge is if you've never, I'm not saying you have to go through these to, you know, there's some wonderful, you know, professionals out there, for example, that, you know, you don't have to have had a drug problem to be a great drug worker, right? But yes, let's come back to the anxiety and the woodland warrior stuff, because I like a bit of bushcraft. Brilliant. I love fell in love with it after seeing Ray Mears on the TV, right? But let's go back to, you've been shot, you've got what, a 9-meter bullet in your body?
I mean, I was incredibly lucky because I hadn't got my body armor on, and it went through the front of my knee, round the side and out the back,
Whoa.
and the bullet ended up in a doorway, and I've actually got the lead bit on my wall. He was my Federation rep, Colin. He's a good friend of mine now. He got it framed, and it's on my
Wow.
wall, bizarrely. But yeah, so I mean, I was told if it would have been a millimeter, sort of, my knee would have just been shattered. So just incredibly lucky.
It's mad, isn't it, that in Northern Ireland, the punishment that the paramilitary groups dish out is a kneecapping. If you get caught for drugs over there, let's just say the IRA, for example, will take you down an alleyway, shoot you through both knees and sometimes your elbows. And the next, within days, these people are up hobbling around Belfast again I've seen it. It's very, they even got like a routine to do it. Like, you don't wear long clothes because you don't want the material going in the wound, because that's what's going to cause infection and problems. So they rock up wearing a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, and it's like, if you get caught, I guess you either escape the country, which not everyone's in a position to not very few people are in a position to do, or you just go and accept your fate. And what that must do to you.
Oh yeah, it's funny you make a really good point there, Chris, about that's exactly what happened to my injury. Because of the trousers, the woolen trousers that I was wearing, the bullet obviously takes all that gunk and all the stuff in through, and the local hospital, no fault of them, they didn't have any experience. They stitched up the entry and the exit, and it got all infected. And it was the military hospital at Woolwich actually that helped me in the end. I ended up having to go down there and get it all sorted out, and I think they irrigated it with acid and stuff, but that's an interesting point you make about that. That's exactly what happened to me. But I got shot in both knees and both elbows, thankfully.
It's beyond belief. And like I say, 3 days later, you'll see this guy on his crutches hobbling down the road, and you're like, "All right, Seamus," and he's like, "Yeah." It's, yeah. I don't want to go down that route. Whenever I talk about Northern Ireland, I always say something that upsets somebody. You can't really win talking about, sectarian stuff.
No.
But let's go back, because Wood Green, that's kind of like my let's say hunting ground. That's not the right word, but it's Tottenham, isn't it? Wood Green.
Yeah.
The tube station is like on a sort of big crossroads, isn't it? And then you got the high street, and there's a few supermarkets as you go down, and some nice restaurants and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been back there for a long time now, but that's I went back a few years ago, and it had changed incredibly. In fact, I came out of the tube and looked around and thought, where am I? I didn't recognise it had changed so much.
Yes. Yeah, I'm the chaplain of a motorcycle club up there. That's how I get to spend a fair bit. It's probably the place I go most of all in the UK, other than my home city.
Wow.
I'll have a newfound kind of outlook on it now. I'll be watching every litter bin and thinking, blimey, there was a time that could have just gone bang,
Yeah, thinking of Helen.
Yes. Well, I will be. So you're in this armed response unit. It's kind of in the infancy of the unit itself. And did you have to do a lot of shooting on the range? Was there a lot of tactics involved?
Yeah, we did a lot of shooting on the range and training, and the courses themselves to get in were hard, and it was tough. I don't think you kind of realise until you look back, and you're probably the same, you know, you look back and think, God, wow, some of the things you pass. But at the time, it was just, yeah, I've done that, you know. It was just kind of, I just got that kind of personality, I guess, that it was just kind of all ordinary. But yeah, you were constantly training and upgrading, and yeah, I was lucky to do my advanced driving. So yeah, I mean, I did lots of good things really, and it's kind of only now I started talking about it after all these years of not talking about it. You know, you start thinking, yeah, actually, it was, you know, I did do a thing or two, but it just like you said earlier, it just becomes sort of just normal in a way, and I think that's partly why I didn't really ever talk about it, because you know, it was only sort of getting in contact with Nick Goldsmith at Hidden Valley Bushcraft that he sort of, you know, sort of started believing in my story really.
Let's go back to the weapons then, because again, the unit's in its infancy. Now you see police officers in London got all kind of fantastic weaponry. Looks like Swiss-made MP5s or whatever they're called. Or I know somebody can put in the comments what the weapons are now. I have no idea. I don't pretend I do, but you know, they look almost like space age, some of these things. But back then, what was it? Were you armed with 9mm?
Yeah, I know. I look at their kit now, and I just haven't got a clue. It's incredible. Yeah, so we'd got the Glock. I remember we got the Glock, but they were still using, I think it was the Browning, I think, quite as a sidearm, I think. And I just joined at that kind of changeover to the Glock, and then the MP5, yeah, which we used to have to keep locked in. It's supposed to be locked in the safe in the back of the car, and we didn't even wear our body armor all the time. It was yeah, it's just changed beyond recognition really now. You know, and rightly so. It was, but I guess it was just in its early. It was an early concept, you know. It's only just sort of taken off. So, and I remember there was an argument about because we wanted to get rid of these white shirts because we said they're not really very practical, and they just didn't want us to have like a dark blue shirt because they just wanted us to look like ordinary police officers at the time. But obviously we've gone way, you know, from that, haven't we now?
Yeah, to give you my sort of take on the people with guns thing. As I said earlier, you know, it's always a bit of a dodgy wicket giving a 19-year-old a machine gun, because you don't really know a lot when you're 19, and you certainly don't own your own mind at that age, or certainly a lot of other people have got dibs on your mind. But in the military, it does attract a whole cross spectrum of society, like I'm sure the police does, you know. And in that broad spectrum, you get your fair share of bloody idiots and sociopaths. And I'm not saying they make it any kind of majority or anything, but there's certainly a sprinkling. And we'd have this situation where our kind of officers and the hierarchy would just make bloody mountains out of molehills to kind of exercise our job. So I give you like one example, not related to Northern Ireland. Just this was back when I was at a barracks in the UK, and like a mentally unwell person ran past our main gate, and he had an Action Man gun. It was about that big, clearly a toy plastic gun, right? The freaking military blew that into a full-on terrorist incident, with the security state of the camp going up. You know, everyone told, rather than just have your ammunition in your pouch, you clipped it onto your weapon. We weren't quite at the make ready stage, and I would just look at these guys going, you bloody idiots.
Yeah.
It's a mentally unwell chap. Anyone could have seen that and gone, you know, I'm not saying it's a clever idea. There was no threat whatsoever to the camp security, whichever way you tried to spin it, except maybe if this guy decided to punch the guy on the gate, the security on the gate, that was probably about as dangerous as it possibly could have got.
Yeah.
And the other side of the coin is, then you had these guys going, yeah, if that's me, I'd have fucking shot him. Right, okay, you'd have shot a mentally unwell person for doing like absolutely nothing. Right, you big man, you very big man. And I wonder did you have any kind of, can you relate to this kind of thing that I'm trying to describe during your service?
Yeah, completely. And I think you touched on it, Chris. It's your cross section of society, isn't it? So I think, yeah, just all those characters are there. Just the odd random one, you know, in the police, or there was then, you know, because you are taking from a cross section of society, aren't you? And generally, the vast majority were just, you know, that I only talk my own experiences were amazing. I was really lucky. I worked with amazing people who treated me just, you know, as Helen, you know, I wasn't treated badly because I was a woman, and, you know, the opposite really. Had a lot of opportunity, but yeah, you get the odd, you know. I remember there was an inspector who not on the firearm, this was just on just normal the normal policing, and he just got a reputation. You just really didn't want him to turn up at any major incident, because you knew you wanted to keep him out of the loop, because if he you know, if he turned up, he'd make something, you know, awful out of it, the situation, and we could deal with it better, you know. So you just get those kind of characters that, you know. So I can relate to what you said, definitely.
There's been a couple of incidents, haven't there, in recent years where well, I guess it depends what your definition of completely innocent is, but there certainly was that case of was it like a Venezuelan guy running through the tube station? And the armed response unit had been briefed that there was going to be, I don't like the word terrorist, but that's what they, you know, what they would have said. And so they put 2 and 2 together, come up with 5, and they gunned this guy down before he even had a chance to find out that, no, he's a completely innocent man. It was just running for his train. And then you get the old chestnut, oh, we thought he was going to pull a gun, or he put his arm in it. All those things that when you've been on the inside, you know, are just standard get out of jail free things that you know that you can say. And I just think he's one of those guys that I've been describing that it just wants to get a kill, just wants to discharge his firearm to say, I've done my job. And yeah, and then of course in America we're seeing these shootings on a far more regular basis, because obviously they've got more people over there and they've got way more armed police officers. And yeah, I'm not trying to say anything. It's just while we're talking of the job, it's not without its problems, is it?
No, it's not. And you know, I still think, even with the failings of the police service in this country, you know, we have got one of, you know, the best police services in the world. Yeah, and I guess, you know, these unfortunate incidents do happen, don't they? But yeah, I think, you know, from my time, I worked with a lot of very, very good people, and sort of only can sort of comment on that side of it, really.
I should point out the other side of the coin, obviously, and yes, you're quite right. We've got, well, let's just say the best police force in the world, to my knowledge, and I've seen a lot of the world. I've also seen incidents where the police have done every single thing they can to de-escalate a potentially lethal situation. So it's someone with a knife and they're distraught, they're, you know, displaying all the signs of trauma or mental unwellness, and whereas in maybe, you know, our cross Atlantic brother and sisters would just pull their gun out and shoot them straight away, the British police officer like put the knife down, and then they're making everybody step back, knowing that, you know, the more they sort of approach this person, the more it's going to trigger their anxiety, and the more chance there is of it all going wrong. And they're just sort of stepping back and they're giving this person every single opportunity. And I've seen people comment on this video from, you know, our Americans going, blooming hell, those police officers showed restraint. It's like, no, they didn't show restraint. They showed empathy, kindness, professionalism, you know, everything we like to pride ourselves on, being British.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think all that, you know, that is how they're trained, and how generally we police in this country. And you know, again, you know, unfortunate incidents do happen, but generally, you know, I think we've still got an amazing police service.
Yes, thank you to a British police force.
Yeah.
How long, Helen, were you in that unit for?
Yeah, so I hadn't joined that, so under a year that I was in the firearms before I got shot. So it was, you know, I hadn't been with them all that long. So you know, in that, you know, that ended my career. So a career that, you know, I thought I'd do 30 years. So but yeah, like we said earlier, you know, everything does happen for a reason, doesn't it? And you know, now I'm patron of the Woodland Warrior program and Hidden Valley Bushcraft, you know, and just none of that would happen. I wouldn't be talking to you any of these if that hadn't happened. So like you said earlier, you've just got to, it's part of ups and downs of life, isn't it, and makes us who we are.
Yes, it is. Let's talk about that, Helen. The Woodland Warrior program, am I understanding this right? Is this kind of therapy through bushcraft?
Yes, totally. And I think they've just got funding. Well, they have just got funding for all key workers as well, which is going to be amazing once we've come through the, you know, the current restrictions around the COVID-19 virus. They're going to be taking, key workers can go there as well and have a day in the woodland, and it's just to de-stress, you know, recuperate and all those things, just doing bushcraft, cooking, and it's just in such a peaceful environment that's just so therapeutic. And I was there with some military guys, and although we hadn't got the same traumas, we just got a lot in common, and it's it's literally been a life-changing experience. Like I spoke about earlier, that, you know, the support and the people that Nick has put me in touch with, and yeah, it's just so thankful that I went there. It's, you know, and I'm going back to help with the Woodland Warrior weekends for emergency services, and yeah, we even went to the Endeavour Fund Awards. Nick was nominated for the top award there. You know, I just sat there. I couldn't believe I was there. It's just shows you, you know, how your life can change in such a short period of time. And I just, you know, hope by talking out, it helps somewhere, someone, and good.
Excuse me. Sorry, you never saw that on Wogan. So we should explain for people who don't know what bushcraft. I'm sure most people these days know what bushcraft is, but it's kind of your skills, isn't it, that we would have had back when we lived in the nature.
Yeah, I mean, we did. I mean, Nick's extremely knowledgeable. He's done some amazing courses, but yeah, we did wood carving and you know, different bits of foraging. He pointed out stuff, and it's just all really low key. But just takes you away from the, you know, the modern sort of busyness and stress that we all get caught up in, and you literally just have to, you just stop and, you know, you sleep in the woods. You have a sort of camp bed, you build your tarpaulin and your shelter, and it's all part of the weekend, and cook. And yeah, it's just amazing what a powerful process it is in just such a simple concept, really.
Something very therapeutic about just a fire, isn't there?
Yeah.
Watching the
Yeah.
flames and chatting. And have you ever tried to make fire?
We did all that. Yeah, we did it with friction, and yeah, that's really exciting when it actually works.
I've never
Yeah.
managed to do it. I've tried it a few times. I think you can buy kits on eBay. They give you the right types of wood, because a lot of it is whether you got the right type of wood. Otherwise, you got the bodra, and you can be going for hours, and you just basically screw your hands up and don't get much progress. But it's fascinating when you watch people that know how to do it.
Oh yeah, yeah. It'd be, I'm sure you'd love it there. And Nick's just an amazing character, and yeah, it's just that I think, you know, once we come out of these restrictions around the virus and that, you know, they're going to be really busy there.
Well, did you say Nick was the proprietor?
Yeah, Nick Goldsmith and his wife Louise. So Nick was a Royal Marine who suffered his own mental health through the traumas of, you know, what he experienced. And Louise is she's just finished with the police. And they also run a woodland kindergarten in the woods as well. So yeah, it's Hidden Valley Bushcraft.
Wow, it might be. My producer and I were always looking for constructive documentaries to make, I suppose you could say. And I think a bushcraft weekend would be a great thing to go and film, and and especially to get the story of the, you know, the therapy kind of side of things, and how that's helping people.
It'd be amazing, because his backstory is that he bought this bit of woodland basically just to cope with his own mental health and his struggle. I mean, it would be just an amazing story, you know, for you guys, because you know, he's turned that, being on the brink, to this, just between the two of them, this amazing thing. You know, they've got funding from the Endeavour Fund award from Prince Harry for veterans, and it's an amazing story, really. And
yeah, perhaps you can have a word with him on my behalf, because I would put it on my to-do list, but my to-do list is so ridiculously huge now. There's no way I can do all the things on there. But yeah, by all means, have a word with Nick and say that maybe we could do something together. And my producer's a Netflix director, so he knows all the tricks of the trade and how to put a good documentary together. I think that would be great. We could do like a sort of a documentary, a practical documentary podcast. And I'm always up for sleeping out under canvas and doing a bit of bushcraft.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, and I know they've got some exciting things coming up as well. So yeah, maybe I could. I think Louise does all the sort of admin-y stuff, so maybe I could sort of put your name, you know, to her. And
yeah, by all means, put them in touch, and it'd be great.
Yeah.
It would be great, great to have a chat.
Right.
So, Helen, we'll put any details you want to put below the YouTube video. Let me know. So if you want people to contact you via LinkedIn or whatever it is, or if you've got social media, we'll put that below. If anyone wants you to come and speak, they can again get hold of you. How is that going? It's must be quite well, I mean, I know it's not the easiest things, is it, to get up in front of people and talk?
No. Oh, it's something I never in a million years imagined. And Nick said, I remember saying around the campfire, you'll public speaking one day. I was like, no way. And I was terrified beforehand, but so proud that I did it. And it was just taking off really. And then of course, we've had this with the virus, so it's everything's on hold, isn't it? But
yeah, I'm the same. I'm looking at my wall calendar there, and all my speeches they're not going to happen now. And oh, hey ho, I'm sure they'll be rebooked at some later.
Yeah,
I was looking forward to my free night in the hotel. Gonna use all the room service and.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'll say, yeah, because they put you up for a night in a hotel before you do your talk. I'm gonna use all the room service, and I'm gonna drink all the mini bar and run a hot bath. And
yeah. Oh, bless you.
So, Helen, you've been absolutely wonderful to speak to. I've thoroughly enjoyed our chat. Thank you so much. And I wish you all the best with everything. Congratulations on your, is fortitude the right word? For a writer, I'm not the best at English, but, just for setting such a great example and for living such an amazing life. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for getting in touch with me and letting me talk to you. And yeah, it's just been lovely, really genuinely lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Stay on the line, Helen. I'll just say goodbye to our friends at home. Friends at home, thank you ever so much for watching another edition of the Bought the T-Shirt podcast. If you could like and subscribe, if you did like, if you didn't, don't. And big love to you and your families. Thank you. Hello, friend. I hope this finds you well. My name's Chris THRALL. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando, and I fought my way back from chronic trauma and addiction to live, work and travel in 80 countries across all 7 continents, achieving all of my dreams and goals along the way. Now I pass my simple system on to other people, but I can only help you if you like and subscribe. So please do so, because you get one life, and if you live it right, one is enough.